Hello friends, today we're going to talk about my reading goals and plans for 2025, and I'm very excited for my reading this year. I really want to prioritize flexibility a lot. I want that to be like a main thing for me throughout the year, because I've tried doing number goals in the past and it's only ever been pretty negative. so yeah, I never put any pressure on numbers at all. I really enjoy trying to follow like my own thread of interest. Following my own curiosity and having it lead me from one thing to the next and sort of falling down a rabbit hole. I really enjoy doing that kind of thing, and so I think flexibility is a way to allow for that. And I've already, I think, implemented this idea of flexibility into my reading so far this year, because one of the first plans I made for the year was to do a slow read of Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. And I did start it. I got a few chapters into this, but I very quickly realized that this is historical fiction. It is actually a biography of Thomas Cromwell, and it's the kind of historical fiction that's based on a real figure, and I don't know anything about the Tudors and I don't know anything about Thomas Cromwell, and this book really throws you right into the story. It does not do much hand holding, and so I realized that this is the kind of book that, the fun of historical fiction is to learn about a new time period and really get immersed in it. And I was feeling lazy about doing that. I was just feeling lazy about, reading other helpful things alongside as I went. And so I think that told me that it's probably not the right time for that, because I'd much rather have that experience of doing it as like a project where I include other books that kind of enrich my experience and just give me a fuller experience with a book like this. I think it's the kind of book where it's a choice. I think if you've read it, let me know. Do you agree that it's probably fine to read it without any prior knowledge, or do you really think that it does kind of matter? Either way, I think for me, I would much rather pick it back up when I'm in the mood to make a project out of it and enjoy it fully, what to me would be fully in that way. But yes, flexibility. Because I definitely just realized that my inspiration, my interest is just kind of elsewhere right now, and so I'd rather make more room to follow where my mind is at right now. And so I've realized that there are certain things that are habits of mine that I think might get in the way of this idea of following my threads of interest and curiosity. And so I want to mention those. And so one of them is based on how I've talked about how I get a lot of my inspiration and ideas for books to read from BookTube. And I think I have a habit sometimes, though, a bad habit, of maybe being more attracted by a person's excitement over a book rather than necessarily being so interested in the book itself. So I really want to avoid that sort of pitfall. And the point is not to avoid being inspired or influenced by recommendations on BookTube. I definitely am still going to get ideas from BookTube, but I want to be careful of this sort of borrowed excitement. Just being more careful about really assessing whether the book itself is what I'm interested in, or if I'm just kind of jealous of that person's excitement. Just to make sure that I am not interrupting my sort of own curiosity and the sort of wavelength that I am in that moment. And then something else I realized might be a problem this year if I'm not a little careful is how last year I started my BookTube channel and I was very excited about readathons. And it's not to say that I regret at all any of the things that I read or the videos that I dedicated to readathons because I had a ton of fun, and some of my favorite reads were from the readathons. But I'll probably try to not dedicate a whole month's worth of reading to a readathon, you know? Maybe it can be more like one book or two. Again, so that I'm not interrupting those threads of curiosity or interest. Because I'm definitely still very excited for readathons. I love participating. I love seeing what other people are reading. And I'm very excited for the ones this year. Jane Austen July, Faulkner in August, Framed in September, Victober, all of those. I am definitely still very interested in participating. I'll just maybe, dial back the amount of reading that I do for each of those so that I'm still making room for, other kinds of rabbit holing. So another goal of mine for the year is also to try to read more from my shelves. And I know this is a big thing for a lot of people. I definitely have some books on my shelves that I know are there and they're gonna stay there, and it's okay. I'm not in a hurry, and that's totally fine. But I definitely have some books that have been glaring at me because I keep saying, I wanna get to that, I wanna get to that. And they're like, yeah. Those I really want to make a bigger effort to get to this year and really assess, do I want to read them and go ahead and read them, or am I maybe not so interested in them anymore and I can unhaul them and make more room for new books, which I've already done with something that every time I do it, I think it's so helpful and I don't do it enough, and I want to do it more. And I did it a couple weeks ago. And it is grabbing a big stack of books, in particular these books that have been glaring at me, and just sampling a few pages from each. And I find this super helpful. It sounds so simple, but it's super helpful because sometimes it tells me immediately, oh, this is really not for me. Though usually what it does is actually just bring that book to the forefront of my mind, and it gets me excited for it so that I do actually end up reading those books right away. So yes, I did this recently, and so I've been reading some of those books. So one that I started and finished was Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. And this has been sitting on my shelf for a couple years now, at least. And I just felt very intimidated by it because I knew that it had kind of an unusual structure, narrative, and I just felt very intimidated by it. And so doing this thing where I sit down and just sample it was so helpful because I realized, oh, this isn't actually difficult though. Like, it's not actually challenging and like, oh, it's so hard, like it took away that intimidation factor. And I went ahead and read it and really, really enjoyed it. So I'm so glad about that. And then another book that I mentioned in videos last year that I wanted to get to and then I never did, I sampled again, I started reading, is Jack by Marilynne Robinson. And I actually decided to DNF this one. And I'll be talking about all of these books soon in a reading update, I promise. But yeah, I decided to DNF it even though it's part of a series, and I finally did pick it up and I realized that's not the vibe. And then more recently as well, I am currently reading Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susan, and I've been really enjoying this. I'm still towards the beginning of it, but so far I'm really enjoying it and I'm really glad. I think I bought this one and Lincoln in the Bardo at the same time. So yeah, I'm happy to be getting to these books finally. And another thing that I've been working on is actually my reading plans for the end of last year were to just try to finish books that I had paused or was in the middle of reading towards the end of the year. And I did end up finishing some books that I was in the middle of, War and Peace and Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Those were two that I finished at the end of last year. But also I picked a book back up that I had paused last year and finally finished it. And that one was The Long Form by Kate Briggs. So I'm pretty proud of that. So again, I'll be talking about this soon. And then another book, actually 2 books, that I paused last year were for a project. So I want to talk about projects. And these 2 are 2 translations of The Passion According to G.H. by Clarice Lispector. So I've mentioned in some videos that I would really love to do a project where I read these 2 different translations of this book and just talk about my experience with that, of, you know, what differences I notice in when reading the same book with a different translation. Yeah, I just think that would be really cool and interesting, maybe in a vlog style video. I think that could be really cool. And then another cool project that I'm thinking about is actually inspired by one of my Christmas gifts that I got last year. My husband Bruce gifted me multiple subscriptions to literary journals. I didn't ask for this, but he subscribed me to 5 literary journals. And so I have some examples to show you. So I got the New York Review, which is in this kind of newspaper kind of ish format, and the London Review, and then I have Paris Review and Granta. And I think I'm also subscribed to World Literature Today, but I haven't gotten an issue of that yet. It might just be that that one has fewer issues a year than these 2. But I thought it would be really cool to, you know, later in the year, once I've had a good amount of time checking these out, just talking about them, talking about my experience reading them, the differences between them, if I plan to maybe keep a subscription for any of these. I think that would be super, super cool. So far, I haven't read much from any of them because I got them pretty recently, but this one in particular, the Granta one, is featuring specifically translated literature from mainland China, which is really cool because there's not, you know, nearly as much that gets translated by writers from mainland China. And the first story in here is the only one that I have finished, but I enjoyed it so much. And it's one of those that inspired some curiosity, sparked some curiosity, because the story is about 3 friends that meet at this panel for a particular short story collection by an author, a real author, called Roberto Bolaño. And I didn't know anything about this author, so I looked up this collection, and it's really cool because the story is very intertextual, and a lot of the premise of the book is inspired by the general kind of themes and devices used within the short story collection. And so it got me interested in that author and in that short story. And this story itself was just very fun. It references a lot of literature, and the friends themselves are very into literature. They're also kind of deadbeats, and very fun story. I'll definitely talk about this, you know, later on, but so far I'm having a lot of fun reading from all of these journals and finding inspiration from them in that kind of way. So now I'd like to get into some specific genres and then some authors and books that I might want to read within those genres. But before I do, I wanted to talk about some of like the general sort of themes and you know, things I look for in the books that I want to be reading right now. And so some of those are, if you've been watching my channel, you probably would already know, things of memory and moral ambiguity, interiority, but also I've been thinking I would really like to look for specifically stories and literature that discuss things like philosophy, psychology, existentialism, and, you know, search for meaning, things like that. But yes, so to get into genres, I'm going to start with classics. So to start off from my shelves, some authors that I have already read from and would like to read more from, I have Morris by Ian Forster, To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, and Jazz by Toni Morrison. So these are all authors that I have enjoyed and I would love to continue reading, and these are just the books I'll probably read next by them, since these are books that I already have on my shelves. And then moving on to some authors that I would like to try for the first time. I would like to try D.H. Lawrence. I have Lady Chatterley's Lover, and I would also love to try more classic Russian literature, because I've read a good amount of Tolstoy at this point, but I haven't tried any other ones. And so definitely Dostoevsky is on my list, and I have White Nights, which is a short story collection, but I also have some of his larger novels if I want to go all in. You know, I have Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment, and also I have The Master and Margarita by Bulgakov. So, yep. And then for some more translated classics, I have Death in Venice by Thomas Mann, which is German, and then also The Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa, who was Portuguese, and I'm very keen on this one. I'm hoping to pick it up very soon. And another author that I would like to try, I don't have any of his books yet though, is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, because at the end of last year I read Pedro Páramo, which was very inspirational to Marquez in his most kind of well-known fiction, and also to a lot of Latin American writers. So yeah, I think I'd like to try 100 Years of Solitude probably, so I'll be getting that soon. So next we're going to talk about nonfiction, and I definitely want to really prioritize nonfiction this year. I wasn't able to read as much nonfiction as I meant to last year, so I'd like to really try to prioritize it earlier in the year this year compared to last year. And yes, so definitely still want to make my favorite memoirs and nonfiction videos. We'll see, I might split them. Yes, so those will be coming. And then also, I really want to read more of the books that I talked about in my nonfiction recommendations videos, the creepy nonfiction and art-related nonfiction recommendations video. I definitely want to read a lot more of those books and talk about them. Maybe make a dedicated kind of update talking about those books. I think that might be cool. So maybe another project. And also, just I love making those themed kind of recommendations videos. I think they're so fun. I really enjoy making them, and so I would love to make more of those. I would like to maybe make them more talking about books that I have already read and recommend from experience rather than from just research, though. I would really like to do that. Yes, right? So for example, recently I noticed that a bunch of books that I had read all had the common theme of death. And so I think it would be really cool to talk about all of those together in one dedicated video, talking about, you know, all of these books on death all together. So, you know, doing more videos like that. And then also memoirs. I love memoirs, and I read, I think maybe only one last year, which is really sad, but I ended up loving that book, so that's okay. But I also have In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, which I got last year and I wasn't able to get to, and I would really like to. You can see I read like the intro, or just, you know, sampled it, and I know I'm really interested in it. So there's this that I would like to get to. And then I also would like to read more from authors that I have already read from. So I have Emily Rapp Black. This is Frida Kahlo and My Left Leg, and this is all about her very personal connection to Frida Kahlo and her art. But she has lots of other memoirs, so I would like to read more from this author. And also from Deborah Levy, I have The Cost of Living, which is one of my favorite memoirs. I really enjoyed this, and she has more memoirs. She has a series of memoirs, so I would definitely like to try more of them. And I would also really like to try Annie Ernaux. She writes a lot of nonfiction, very memoir-like, and essays. So I would definitely love to check her out this year. And moving on to essays, I have this book that I got very recently, and it is Street Haunting by Virginia Woolf. So this is a little essay collection, and I just want to read off some of the titles to give you an idea of what's in here. How should one read a book? Women in Fiction, Craftsmanship, The Sun and the Fish, On Being Ill, Evening over Sussex, Reflections in a Motor Car. And there's a few more than that, but that gives you an idea of the sort of subjects that are in here. So I'm very excited to get to that. And then I also really want to read more by Susan Sontag. I bought this little guy recently and finished it very recently and absolutely loved it. I've also read Regarding the Pain of Others in the past. I read that quite a while ago, and a good amount of it I think went over my head, and I don't remember much of it. But I'm just very interested in reading more by her, and so I have this larger collection of her essays that I think I'd like to get, especially after my experience with this, because I really, really enjoyed her essays in here to do with camp, and also some thoughts on kind of art and where it was headed in the mid-20th century. I really enjoyed this, so would also just love to read more criticism. I'm really enjoying delving into that, and yeah, just learning lots of new things from it. So I would love to talk about some criticism books in the future as well. And then the last author in this section is Polly Barton, who is a translator. She translates from Japanese to English, and this is her book on translation, but it's not just translation. It's on her love for the country of Japan and its language and her time living there, which I'm very interested in reading about. And then another nonfiction book by her that I got, and it's kind of random, but it's Porn and Oral History. Kind of random, but that randomness is also kind of what got me interested in it, because it's these conversations, sort of interview style question answer situation with people throughout many years. And I just thought how interesting to see what people have to say, I suppose, about a topic that is very, you know, kind of hush hush. Yeah, I just thought it would be cool to see what's in here. Moving on to fiction, some new to me authors that I would like to try this year in translation are Magda Szabó and Sándor Márai, both Hungarian authors, post and pre-20th century. I would also like to try Jan Fosse, maybe his septology, and also Ryu Murakami, because this is an author that my husband Bruce has been reading a lot of works from, and he keeps telling me about them. I'm just like, I need to read these books because they sound so interesting. And in general, I would just love to read more literature in translation. Japanese translation in particular, because Bruce has been buying a lot of Japanese translated books, and they just sound so interesting. Some are classic, some are more contemporary, and I just think it would be really cool to read a bunch of them and talk about them in a video. Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun. And then some authors that I have already read from but would like to continue to read more from. The first one is Elizabeth Strout, which I had read Amy and Isabel some years ago and really, really loved. And I had this sense that I would just love her writing, but just, I don't know, kept not trying more of her books. And the first book that I started and finished this year was actually My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout, and I ended up loving it to the point that I got a little ahead of myself and I bought a bunch of her books. So I should probably get to some of those and justify the excitement there, but yes, she's definitely one I want to continue to read from. And also Hong Kong, I have The Vegetarian, which I've read twice and really enjoy, and so I would love to try more of her writing. I know she has a new book that just got translated, but I think I might try Greek Lessons next. Don't own it yet though, but I'm very excited for that. And also Deborah Levy. I know she also has fiction, and a while ago I tried and failed to read The Man Who Saw Everything. I couldn't get into that one, but I would like to maybe try some of her earlier fiction and start there instead. Yeah, I think that would be good. And the last genre I want to mention is fantasy, because I would love to continue to try out fantasy and find fantasy books that I might enjoy. And so I have 2 books ready to go when the right mood strikes. I have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and also Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. And those are the 2. Where are you going? Okay. So yes, these are 2 fantasy books that I might just get to this year. We shall see. Because the point of this list for me is really not to be strict about it at all. You know, I find these kinds of lists, plans and goals helpful in that I find myself at certain points during the year needing a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of motivation, and being able to pull this up and look at it is very helpful, so that I don't kind of slump, you know, or get lost in not knowing what to read or whatever. You know, it just makes it easy to look at suggestions from myself, if that makes sense. So yes, but definitely keeping that idea of flexibility, looking for inspiration, and following those threads of interest are a big priority. But I definitely have more ideas than just this. These were just the things that came to mind and felt cohesive in the moment. But yes, I am definitely very open to changing plans and creating new plans and continuing to follow that curiosity throughout the year, and sharing all of that along the way. So yeah, those are all my plans and goals. And if you have any plans or goals that you'd like to share with me, I would love to hear about them. We can chat about it. Or if you're doing a super chill, no plans, no goals, I would love to know that too. That sounds pretty cool. But yeah, that's all I have today. So I will see you next time. Bye.